I want to be daring, baby, dance the night away. I let my hair down if I want. Don't you just get tired chasing fame and being pretty all the time? Doesn't sound like fun. You can do better. Let me show you what a good time looks like. You can do better. You can do better. Let me show you what a good time looks like. You can do better. I dare you to be wilder.
What is going on, nerds of wrestling, and welcome to today's episode of What's Up Wrestler, a podcast by Nerds of Wrestling. I'm your host, Justin Del Rio, and my guest at this very time is Killjoy, Kolbe Max. I hope I did not botch that. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Thank you for joining. We're going through a lot of time in professional wrestling right now. Before we went live, I was talking to you about Survivor Series.
Yes.
I watched it. You watched it. What were your thoughts on, the show overall?
I generally think as a whole I was entertained and I was into it the whole time. And actually, I usually ask my mom to watch wrestling with me, and she's not. I mean, she's like, oh, okay. But
right.
She was into the Becky Charlotte match. The opening match.
I thought it was a good match overall, but for some reason I just wasn't a fan of the ending.
Really?
With the two roll ups. My friend made a pretty good valid point where he was like, hey, two heels are trying to outdo the other, and Becky, remained on top as the top heel, and cheating to win. So I'm like, all right, yeah, no, I guess you're right, but. But any other match in Survivor Series stood out to you?
Well, of course, Big E versus Roman definitely stood out.
As someone who is obviously as excellent as Roman, we were talking about it before. I honestly don't see anybody beating Roman. I think Roman is to the point, though, where it's like, did you really need this win? Like, did you have to win this match? Like...
I think it's because whenever the day comes where he does get the throne, it makes it even more special.
Right. I can't disagree with that, but it's like same thing with Seth Rollins. Why does Seth Rollins have to be the sole survivor, being a Jeff Hardy? I mean, I could go on for hours talking about WWE, but we are not talking about WWE. We are talking about you, Kolbe. For the nerds who don't really know who you are, what you're all about, tell the nerds who you are and what your character is all about.
Well, I'm the punk emo kid that I am. I just got Killjoy from the song Na 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 by My Chemical Romance, which is actually my entrance song. I'm really just myself. I scream a lot. I wear a lot of eyeliner and dark eye makeup. I kind of have like a lucha hybrid style. I wrestle in West Virginia, and I currently live in West Virginia. I've wrestled in Tennessee, Ohio, and for Ohio Valley Wrestling in Kentucky.
Wrestling for OVW, obviously, for the nerds who are listening who don't know what OVW is is WWE's old developmental brand. Mm-hmm. So for you to even, wrestle for that promotion is kind of surreal. Just look at the wrestlers who came from there. John Cena, Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar, Batista. I'm sure the list goes on.
Because there's whenever you walk in the hallway, the opening hallway, there is like kind of like a walk of fame almost. And I remember walking in there for the first time, and it's like I'm sharing a building that was once as the names that you just said, but including like Melina, CM Punk, Kurt Angle.
It's crazy to think about all the wrestlers that came from OVW, and obviously WWE became FCW, and now NXT. But before OVW, what was training like? What got you into professional wrestling, and how old are you when you discovered it?
Well, I grew up watching it. I have two older brothers. They're twins. They're now 24, soon to be 25.
Hey, I have a twin too. Look at that. That's awesome.
Hey. But I grew up watching it, and I mean, I always kind of in the back of my head, I want to be in steel cage matches. I want to wrestle this person. But I mean, I don't really think it was ever kind of serious in a way. Right. I mean, because I was just a kid. And then when the day came when I was 15, I met Finn Balor and Bailey, as some listeners may know. And I think that was the day that just kind of started everything, where I was like, I want to give somebody the best day of their life the way they did for me.
Right. Now,
So,
when you first started watching wrestling, how did you get into it? Because you just said, your two brothers are into it. Were your brothers always into it? Did they always were they like, come on, watch it with us, watch it with us?
no, I just kind of saw it on one day and it was entertaining. I was attracted to John Cena, Randy Orton, CM Punk.
Right.
I mean, I especially liked watching CM Punk growing up. And so now that he's on AEW now and getting to kind of watch him again, it's just like, yeah.
Right. Do you is there any a specific moment in WWE that you were like, oh my god, that was awesome, like that was insane?
Well, my favorite match of all time is Bailey versus Sasha at TakeOver, the 30-minute Iron Woman match.
Really?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I love that match, but I love that match at Brooklyn a lot better than
Really?
The Iron Women's match was fantastic. Obviously, you had great spots, excellent. Just Sasha being a heel and Sasha making poor Izzy cry, which is something that people still remember till this day.
Oh, I know.
But what really what attracted you to that match more than the one in Brooklyn?
I think it's just such a historic moment. I mean, that was the first time women have main evented like a major pay-per-view. It was the first of many. The storytelling was excellent. There was not a dull moment in that match. It's one of those matches that I can watch. I just don't get tired of watching it. and I've learned a lot watching it.
There's always something different in a match that you watch over and over and over again that you notice, like, oh, I didn't notice that before. Even though you watched it 1,000 times, there's always something that
I don't watch it. I've watched it like 10 times maybe, but like not 1,000.
Right, yeah, I exaggerate. I always
I understand what you're saying.
Like 10 times is like 10 times like 1,000 to non-wrestling fans. Like why'd you watch it 10 times? I don't know, because it's great. Like why not?
Mainly because let me think.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good. But I was saying how I'm not going to give any spoilers or anything, but a 30-minute Iron Woman match is possibly coming in my future. So
look at
I will say that.
That
I
is
personally
awesome.
want it to happen. So just everybody stay tuned for that. But
is that another match that like you've always wanted to be in as a wrestler? An Iron Woman match or Iron Man?
I want to be in a steel cage match. I want to be a steel cage and especially a War Games match.
War Games, yes. Holy shit!
I just don't want to be one of the first two people though, because you'd have to have a lot of stamina for that. And where I do, but I don't know if I can handle a half hour. Well, granted, my debut was in a Royal Rumble, and I was in it for 38 minutes, and I came out as entrant 3.
Ooh, well, we will definitely be talking about that soon. But we were talking about some of your favorite matches. You said Bailey, Sasha, Iron Women. Any other matches really stand out to you?
Well, Bianca versus Sasha at WrestleMania this past year. Finn Balor matches always stand out. I don't know if there's not a whole lot of particular ones, but I really liked him versus Roman this past year. Cena versus RVD. One Night Stand.
Yeah, that's a throwback, bro. Nice. That's a good one.
That's actually my boyfriend's favorite match, so I gotta
yeah, that's a good one. Obviously,
Trish versus Lita, main event Monday Night Raw.
Did you see that match at Unforgiven in 2006?
Oh, that was Trish's last match, right?
Yeah, in Canada.
Why have I not seen that? Oh my gosh.
What?
I don't know why. Like, why is it just now hitting me that I have not seen that match?
I'm like baffled that you have not
Same.
seen that match, bro.
Like, I don't know why I haven't.
Well, you got Peacock, right?
Yeah, I do. Well, I
Watch
moved
it.
off of Tyler's.
Well, you gotta watch it right after this show's done.
Oh,
Be like, yo, I'm gonna go watch that match. You gotta let me know right away how it is. Like, that's crazy that you haven't seen that. But let's talk about your training. What started the fire to start training? What really lit that match?
So, when I was, as I said, when I was 15, I met Finn and Bailey, and I was like, okay, that's it. I want to do this. So then when I was 16, I went to my first ever indie wrestling show, which was awesome. And I met my head trainer there, Rocky Rage.
Nice.
And honestly, the rest is history.
Now, to go to your first ever independent wrestling show, what was going through your mind? Obviously, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what to expect. Completely different from a WWE show. One thing that really is different from independent wrestling to WWE shows is that you get to meet the performers after the show, take pictures of them, get autographs before and after, which is something I'm a massive fan of. 27 years old. I love going to shows and just meeting all these wrestlers. Like, I'm like a little kid at a candy store. It's so cool. But what's one thing that you kind of noticed at an independent wrestling show that you weren't expecting?
Just how much of a culture it is. It's like, of course, when you watch things on TV, everybody has their own fan base, but like for independent wrestling, you see reoccurring fans at every different show. It's just, like I said, it's a culture. It's everybody has their favorites, and I don't know how to explain it other than that.
No, I mean it's a great explanation. From coming from Connecticut, which is where I live. I've got to see many wrestlers come from, not the bottom of the barrel, but like kind of climbing their way up through the middle to the top. Wrestlers such as Carmelo Hayes in NXT. He was Christian Casanova back. Yep. See, I met him. Bro, like I have at least 60 pictures of him. Like I always take pictures of him at shows. Flip Gordon from ROH. Now I know he's gonna be doing his thing back in the Indies. Dijak, Keith Lee, Ricochet. It's the list goes on, and it's so crazy to see all these independent wrestlers start from the bottom and make their way up. And you're like, hey, I know him. Hey, I know her. Like I've seen them wrestle at a bingo hall with 200 people. Now they're wrestling in front of 80,000 people at WrestleMania. It's so cool. It's really I can't explain it. It's like you're so proud of them. Like I'm so happy for them. Because they've been working so hard to get to the top, and now they're there. But other than so you went to your first independent wrestling show. You're like, okay, you met Finn and Bailey. Okay, you're like, I want to do this.
Yeah, well, I met Finn and Bailey then the indie wrestling show.
Oh, okay, so you met Finn and Bailey indie show. So what steps did you take to start training? What were the steps you took?
Well, I started training in a ring older than me.
As a lot of people do.
No, but really, I mean, I just started going to training before shows in the Marmot Rec Center, and then House of Rage started because I started training that October. And then House of Rage started that February. And that's when I really hit the ground running. But then COVID hit. And so that was frustrating for a while. Obviously, we were out for a good 3 months.
Right.
And then that May, we decided, we can't really hide forever. We take our precautions, which we did. We stay safe. We wear our masks, everything. And, we've never had an outbreak at our school, fortunately. And then that June, we filmed an ASW show, All-Star Wrestling, in West Virginia. And, yeah, it was... So it's kind of interesting how my debut wasn't even really in front of a live crowd. I mean, there were a few people there to make noise, but I wasn't I actually didn't... Well, I was in a really small match for my second match, which was also a battle royal. And then my third match was a tag match. It was actually me and my trainer, Rocky Rage, against Nicole and Dustin Alexander.
Nice.
It was an outdoor show. It was very surreal. It was kind of like how I went from these two, really small, then all of a sudden
to something
Killjoy
massive.
Colby people know who Killjoy Colby is.
That's incredible. To start the training and to go through COVID, obviously, that was something a lot of wrestlers had a very, very hard time, kind of coping with, there's no shows, what are we going to do? How were you able to keep such a positive mindset going through all that?
Just knowing that there's going to be an end to this eventually, but with what time I have, I'm going to work for it. During quarantine, I dropped 20 pounds. I lost a lot of weight. I discovered a lot of my food allergies, which helped.
That's good.
Yeah, because I didn't really realize till I was 17. I'm 18 now,
Right.
but at the time I was 17, it's like I'm allergic to dairy. Like I'm not just lactose intolerant. I'm full blown
Oh.
allergic to dairy.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Nah, it's really not that bad. There's a lot of like vegan substitutes that you'd be surprised about. Like
I
vegan
love.
pizza is actually really good.
Yeah, no, see, no, that's one thing. I love pizzas so much that I refuse to put anything but like vegetables on it, and I don't know if when I hear vegan, I hear vegetables. So
Yeah.
that's my thing. But before that, obviously, you were talking about you discovered your food allergies. Did you
Yeah.
keep up with like any WWE,
Oh,
AEW?
definitely, definitely.
What were you drawn to the most?
I mean, just the fact that they kind of have the same mindset as us, just to keep going.
Right.
I
You
mean, I
know,
think that's give people hope during this. I'm so sorry. My dog came to interrupt me again.
it's all right.
But it's like give people hope during a time of uncertainty. Kind of, I guess that's why the importance of WrestleMania 35.
With WWE, not having fans, not having
Hmm.
audience and attendance. Same thing as AEW. They were giving us entertain, providing us with wrestling, providing us
Hmm.
with hope. Like you said, obviously it's gonna end eventually. But during the time, obviously you have the WWE Network. Did you
Hmm.
discover any old matches? Did you study any matches? Did you discover anybody
I
new?
did. I watched a lot of. I mean, I knew about Eddie Guerrero, but I went back and watched a lot of his stuff. Who else? I don't know. I think I went back and watched a lot of like 2010 stuff, and like where people might say that the Divas era was really bad. There are some good gems in there too, and I think people would kind of not frown upon the Divas era, but yet see what they were given with, like where a lot of people might say that the Bellas are kind of. I personally have. Granted, I grew up watching them, and
Right.
and same thing with Paige and AJ Lee, Caitlyn, Natalia. Just that was the era that I grew up in, and to me, that's why I liked watching their matches and stuff. And I even wrote sophomore year, I wrote a paper about women's wrestling, and I talked to the
Nice.
import. I talked about the importance of the WrestleMania 31 match between
Yeah.
Paige and AJ versus the Bellas.
That was looking back, that was kind of a marquee match for
Hmm.
all four of those women. Speaking of, you just named some obviously iconic women wrestlers:
Hmm.
Paige, Caitlyn, AJ Lee, especially. Uh, how do you think they would be in today's WWE wrestling?
I honestly, I think they'd be great. I think, well, because Paige says that there's still a huge possibility because Edge came back, Bryan
Right.
Danielson came back, and I mean I think anything's possible. And same thing with AJ Lee. I think anything's possible.
Oh God, I would love to see AJ Lee again. I was a
Same.
big fan of AJ Lee. Her feud with Caitlyn was fantastic.
It
Obviously,
was.
her storylines with Daniel Bryan and CM Punk were iconic, absolutely
Yes.
amazing. But I want to go back to your training. Go back and
Yes,
forth
of
here.
course.
Sorry. How long did it take you to train? And I know you said you were kind of going back and forth through COVID, doing X, Y, and
Hmm.
Z. Uh, but when did you realize and your trainers were like, okay, you're ready? And obviously, training never ends. It's a
It
constant thing
doesn't.
that
That's the thing.
wrestlers have to go through.
Around the first time I won my first title, they were kind of like, you're ready to take. I mean, there was never really a set date, to be honest. I think it
Right.
just kind of happened. I mean, I started going to Tennessee. I started going to WW. I started winning titles. But
To
I
go
think
to
it's just kind of it was like more of a process instead of just one set date.
Right. To go to now I want to talk about OVW.
Yes.
We just mentioned OVW earlier in the podcast. With all the greats that came in there. If you don't remember, just go back and listen. I listed literally four wrestlers from today's wrestling that nobody could forget. To step foot in the OVW building, what was going through your mind when you either got the email or a call from them or like,
Hmm.
hey, we want you to come to OVW? What was
I
going through
got
your
the
mind?
message. It was like, this is happening. like people and promoters and are going to be seeing this,
Right.
and it's like, well, don't mess up.
Yeah, obviously, like you were I'm assuming you were fangirling because I'm assuming you knew what OVW was way
definitely.
before you got the call. Now you're stepping foot into the OVW building. What's going through your mind?
I mean, I just felt like I walked in and I just looked around and like I was just soaking it in because there's always a first time for everything, and just looking at the building, it was kind of cold in there. It was like seeing the beautiful ring, seeing
Right.
how clean everything was.
Absolutely. And OVW is obviously an iconic memorabilia from WWE. But other than wrestling, what else is Kolbe into? Netflix, Hulu. What is your Netflix binge-worthy watching show?
Well, the thing is, I don't have Netflix, but
Oh Lord, you never seen Trish and Lita Unforgiven, and you don't have Netflix. Come on.
I sometimes mooch off of like my friends. Like I watch a lot of good movies. I watched The Pianist off of that movie made the reason why Adrian Brody is one of my favorite actors.
And The Pianist, and I never heard of that movie.
Oh, it's a true story based off of a man like surviving in the Holocaust or during the Holocaust. Like he wasn't in it. Like he narrowly escaped like going to Auschwitz, and it's so interesting.
I love Holocaust movies, but the thing is, they always make me cry. So
Yeah, Schindler's List is, believe it or not, as sad as it is one of my favorite movies because I love movies that like every time I watch it or every time I watch a scene or something, I pick up on something different. And that movie to me is Schindler's List, along with, I don't know if you've heard my other two favorite movies, Silence of the Lambs and Call Me by Your Name.
Never heard of Call Me by Your Name. I was just gonna ask. Speaking, going Holocaust. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas.
I did. I watched, and believe it or not, I got Kolbe Max from my favorite saint, who was actually he was a Catholic priest who gave up his life for somebody else who had a family and everything in the Holocaust, and he was put into just a room just to starve with many others, and he lived for 2 whole weeks. And they finally just lethally injected him because he wouldn't die.
Wow. Jesus,
and that was like less than 100 years ago. The fact that was
even possible.
Yeah, I mean,
that's great. Oh, I don't want to talk about the Holocaust. Oh man. But obviously you just named some movies. Hulu, Disney Plus.
Cowboy Bebop. I love Cowboy Bebop.
Never heard of it.
It's an anime. It's honestly the only anime I ever had interest in.
A lot of my students at work are like, Mr. Justin, do you watch anime? I'm like, no. No, not at all.
I don't either. Like I said, Cowboy Bebop's really the only one I ever had interest in. I mean, I'm open to possibly watching some in the future, but just right now, I'll just stick to Lifetime movies, wrestling, and Impractical Jokers.
You said Lifetime movies. I'm done. Obviously,
hey, there's some good Lifetime movies. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, they're all the same. They're all the same.
Okay, but the Rip from the Headlines ones, those are good.
Yeah, you're not wrong on that one. You Impractical Jokers, obviously, iconic show with 4 of the funniest people I've ever seen in my life. Who's your favorite?
I met Tommy Dreamer, and the first thing I asked him, I said, "So was it like Pants and Q in the middle of a mall?" That. I kind of look back at that. I'm like, Kolbe, what were you thinking?
No, but I mean,
I
honestly, I would have asked the same thing. You were a fan of him. You were a fan of Impractical Jokers. What did he say?
He said, I can't remember what exactly he said. He's like, well, we didn't expect for his balls to fall out. But he also said, on my grave, it's going to be written that I pants Q or I drank Undertaker's spit. Probably both.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I might as well just put both on there. I mean, is Q your favorite from Impractical Jokers?
Actually, no, probably Joe. Well, I like them all, but I feel like Q is probably actually my favorite because he manages to BS his way through everything. I can kind of relate to that in a way.
No, I'm joking.
But no.
I met what's his name? Murr at Comic Con.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just in passing. I mean, his line was packed, and I'm like, I'm not waiting in that line, and then I see him coming from like across the room. I'm like, cool. I just saw him. I was like, hey, Murr. He's like, hey, what's up? Just a quick daps. Like, he had to go. I was like, hey,
I wrote a
I met Murr.
theology paper about Murr and the gospel choir.
What was the paper about?
Like, we had to write about, like, a TV show or, like, a scene from a TV show or something that, like, I don't know. I guess we were kind of reviewing it or something. And I decided to use that because, like, if I was put in that situation, I would have just gone with it. I guess that's
Right.
something that wrestling's taught me. Is that just sometimes you just end up in stupid situations. You're like, you know what, this is what we're doing. We're doing good. So I mean,
You know-
he just got into it. He had fun. That's something that I was kind of talked about it.
You know, that's actually a question that that I wanted to ask. In wrestling, obviously things don't go the way it's planned as always. Is sometimes you have to improvise.
Oh,
Or is
yeah.
there any times in wrestling or in wrestling in particular
Yeah, I
that
can
you're like,
think of
I
a
gotta
few
improvise?
times, but 2 times. Well, they don't necessarily improvise, but it was kind of a scary moment. The third match that I was talking about earlier, the tag team match.
Right.
I went to go hit a suicide dive on because like the three of them were fighting on the outside, and I was supposed to land on all three of them.
Right.
But I overshot them and I scorpioned myself. I was fine. Like I managed to land with my forearms first. I don't know why. I guess Maximilian Kolbe was working overtime. So I'm happy he was because phew. So there's a video of it and it's like I look back and I'm watching it and I'm like I can still feel every air bubble pop in my spine.
Oof.
And another time was actually against my match with Chelsea Green, which was awesome. I loved working with her. She is so classy and she's great to work with. I learned a lot. But I took a clothesline and I'm not sure what happened. If anything, it was probably my fault, but like I landed on my head. Like it was, I don't know what happened. I don't know if I tugged my head in time or what, but I'm like laying there and I'm trying to tell the ref, like, just tell her to put me in a hold. And like I said that, the ref wasn't really helping us out, unfortunately, but she just kind of came and put me in a hold for a couple of seconds and she said, wait, did you remember me talking in your match? And I'm like, no.
Oh my God! Fuck that. That's pretty cool that you got to wrestle Chelsea Green.
It was.
That was the other question I was gonna ask. What was going through your mind when you were told, okay, you're working
Well,
Chelsea
I was
Green?
asked, it's like, well, Colleen's my real name, but you're like, hey, Colby, do you want to wrestle Chelsea Green? I'm like, is that a question?
Hell yeah, I want to work Chelsea Green. What? No, what promotion was that for?
It was for All Star Wrestling.
Nice. And now All Star Wrestling is that a promotion that you are always at?
Just about, yes. It is one of the biggest promotions in West Virginia.
What's the biggest show you work there? If you could.
The Bash and Beckley, which was this past August. It was for ASW, and it was in an arena. It was in an armory. And I won a Battle Royal. That was the first match, actually.
What a way to kick off the show, huh?
Oh, yeah. It was great.
Do you remember how many people were there? What was going through your mind? You know, just.
I remember just because we were setting up the ring and setting up chairs and everything, and I walked in and I looked at my friend right next to me, and I'm like, all right, it won't be right now, but before I'm going to puke. Because there was a big arena.
Yeah?
It was like a civic center almost.
That's sick. Like, obviously, you know, a lot of emotions going through your mind. Obviously, you know, hey, you're going over. Okay, don't cry till after, you know.
Yeah, only I didn't cry, but
I would have cried.
it's like I just looked around and like, I mean, I can only see. Fortunately, it was dark in there, so I can only really see to like the third row back.
Right. But just
still,
like, you know, just like all the lights on you, the music hitting, people going crazy. It must have been like, okay, this is what I've worked for. This is incredible.
yeah, it was definitely one of those moments. It was kind of like winning my first title, and
yeah, no, I bet. There's so much wrestling out there. There's so much promotions all over. You know where you're from, especially the Northeast. The last question,
the Appalachian area.
Yeah, and you know the last question I do want to ask is, where do you see Kolbe, going? Like, where do you see her working?
I mean, if you want me to be completely honest, my ultimate goal is to main event WrestleMania. I want Colby versus Bailey at the main event of WrestleMania.
That would be something. I think that would be something a lot of people would be very excited for. But any independent promotions that you want to work that you haven't heard of, or you're like, okay, I want to go there.
Well, I've loved the crowds in Tennessee. Tennessee is, you guys are awesome. For anybody listening in Tennessee, I definitely want to wrestle in the UK at some point. Ireland too.
Yeah.
Honestly, anywhere. The sky's the limit. I mean, just wrestling gave me so many great things. I met my lovely boyfriend Tyler Osborne because of wrestling. I met all my greatest friends. I met Rocky Rage. I consider myself as Frankenstein because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't know anything. I wouldn't be a wrestler. And same thing with a lot of people like Jack Sharp, Dante Williams, Huff Manley, Kirk Blackman, and countless others.
Yeah, that's a long list right there. Shout out to all those wrestlers for sure.
Yeah,
And shout out to
the
everybody.
list goes on and on.
Right.
But
Shout out.
unfortunately, I think we're running out of time.
No, it's fine. But shout out to all those wrestlers who did help you pave the way
Definitely.
to where you are today.
Especially the person, Jesse Bell Smothers, who I had my first title title against, and no, it wasn't the first title I challenged for, but I think it was the first women's title I ever challenged for. It was the ASW women's title against her. She's the ASW women's champion.
That's incredible, and I do highly recommend if you haven't, definitely check out promotions in the Northeast.
Definitely,
where I'm
I
from.
want to eventually. I know New York is excellent too.
New York, Massachusetts, Maine, Connecticut. Where I'm from.
I especially want to make it out west eventually. I know there's some good promotions in Las Vegas.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy to think the amount of wrestling that's everywhere.
I know.
You just named everywhere. I mean, literally anywhere you go, there's a wrestling promotion. It's crazy. It's
honestly
crazy.
I didn't really know that all of that existed until I was 14 or 15. I just thought that it was just Ring of Honor, WWE, Impact.
That's okay, because I didn't discover independent wrestling until I was a couple years older than you. I was 18 when I discovered independent wrestling, because I was like, what else is there? There's no way there's anything that's going to be WWE. And now I'm like, why do I think that? That's obviously rocking AEW hoodie right here. But I do want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Of course, thank you so much for coming on the show. I definitely do hope to have you on again in the near future.
Please, I'd love to come.
Of course, anytime. I definitely will hit you up. But until then, drop those plugs. Where can the nerds find you?
You can find me at the Kolbe Max on Twitter and Instagram. My Facebook is Kolbe Max. That's Kolbe, not Colby.
Yeah, no, I had to double check the spelling before I submitted everything. But yeah, there you have it, nerds. This has been an episode of What's Up Wrestler, a podcast by Nerds of Wrestling. I'm your host, Justin Del Rio. Peace out, nerds.